little bit of resonance there, some harmony almost.
Indeed.
And you know what? We need harmony today because dear listeners wandered in from the cold of a non-podcast, non-YouTube ether to listen once again to our somewhat sonorous voices. You got a duo again. This time it's myself, Jack, and Matt. Bring in, as always strikes last to you.
At the nice late hour, so you get a what did you say? Sonorous? I was thinking monotone for me at least. But
at least there's a tone, some tonality to monotone. Just one.
Yeah, one.
Yeah, indeed. Maybe I was giving us too much credit with sonorous. Well, hey, noises from mouths.
If we both go monotone, that's two tones. That could be sonorous together. I think maybe possibly.
I'd say so. I'd say that works.
But I think something is coming out that everybody seems really excited about. And
oh my God, it is. It's the talk of the town.
I mean, I feel like what I've seen, it's been a short list.
Oh man. You'll be here all week. Try the wheel.
Yeah. So it looks like we're getting Dwarfs, huh? The Dwarfs box is coming out. And I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna say it. And I don't care about the hate that I get.
Let the hate flow through you.
Disappointed kind of about the way some of these models were sculpted, to be 100% honest. It feels really, really Saturday morning cartoony for a lot of them. And that was from the preview, right? What was that? I can't remember which day that came out. When
way back in like Tacoma, wasn't Tacoma Open? They did the release.
Yeah, I think it was somewhere in there. And the more I've been looking at these pictures, because I am Games Workshop fanboy through and through, I've started to actually align with like the aesthetic that I like from them. And I think it's another one of those armies that is possibly painted as, like full heavy metal scheme, right? And that may be the reason that they have kind of, that I had the immediate like visceral reaction first. But the more I've seen them, especially the infantry, the more I go, oh, that looks awesome, right?
That's exactly the reaction I've been having, actually, because, I've been waiting for these guys since definitely last year, kind of all excited about it. I was even, predicted at the beginning of January, I think. And when we first saw the pictures, I was definitely having a little bit of that, like, oh, I don't know why this seems like slightly off to me. And it was something that kind of bothered me about it with some of the sculpts, some of the doors, because some of them looked awesome a little bit even initially to me, but others would jump out and just sort of seem, like they could have been like with a breakfast cereal in the 90s, like run around like two other guys. Like the Bull Centaurs especially looked a little bit chonky to me, like a little bit like cel shaded or something. Yeah, but
and I realize a lot of it's kind of the angles and the paint job, right? Like there's a smoothness that old heads like you and I aren't used to with Chaos Dwarves. And I think that's a big thing that initially rubbed me wrong about them, was like, as far as models go, there's a lot of smooth lines. There's very little, it doesn't feel as much dwarfy as the old ones do. These feel almost elfin in the way that like the plate is made, like the decorations on everything, they almost feel elfin. Which I think to me was a little off-putting at first. Like almost, if you're looking at the regular troop dudes, like the ones with the Minotaur heads, right? The close combat guys, they almost look like they're wearing like old high elf plate mail. Like
exactly, the scale mail, the shining scale mail, and you look at the trim, it is actually very much the same. I'm looking at one of the guys right now, and he's holding a hammer, he has like a little big hat with a gem in it, but like on the lower half, it's here's my sash, here's my belt, and
Mm-hmm.
below it the plate mail, like the exact sort of scales, and then like the little undercoat trim that I remember painting like on Sword Masters and Lothar Sea Card and stuff like back in the day. So
Mm-hmm.
it does kind of bring me back in the memory bears in that way, but I feel like part of it is definitely the paint job. You know, if you look at that scale metal, you look at like the depth of the metal, you can get a lot more grunge in there than they have attempted. You
Yeah.
know,
And that's something that I'm slowly coming around to. I really, really like the infantry models specifically, the more I look at them too. And we've had a couple of previews, like rules previews come out, right? Like
and
I
they're
know
interesting.
everybody else is so much more interested in them than I am because I always wait for the book to look at the rules. But I figure it'd be kind of a good opportunity to just kind of like see how are they, what kind of army do we think they'll be from what's coming out, you know?
Absolutely. Well, you know, I'll say that just as an unabashed fanboy for this army, because I think I declared myself a Helsmiths of Hashut player before they've even come out.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yep.
I'm definitely going to play them, and you know, I'm just really excited about a balanced chaos force, all sorts of cool things you can do, and access to all the different tricks in the game, rather than like I have to scrimp real hard to have a shooting phase version of it, which I've been doing for a while.
Mm-hmm.
So these guys, before they even put any kind of preview together, have seemed interesting to me because the unit balance gives you all that stuff. You know, you have a priest, you have like wizards, you have a big monster, you have infantry, you
Oh.
have shooting infantry, you have sort of monstrous cavalry infantry, and you even have war machines. Like, what is there not to like? But they have started to show some of the rules on this, and it does not disappoint. I guess the big one, right, is this demonic power business. Did you
Mm-hmm.
catch that when you were looking at the previews and stuff?
No, lay it on me. I'd love to know like what how this will actually affect the army as a whole.
Well, that's an interesting thing. I guess it sort of goes with the theme, right? The whole battle trait that's kind of defined what you do is this idea that they're always like, you know, fueling their like empire and industry with like demons they harvest from the from the realm of chaos and turn into a resource, bind the blades or turn into, you know, demon coal or whatever it is they do. And so they basically have this thing where they can generate demonic PowerPoints by just sort of sitting around and not being in and being on the battlefield in interesting places. So if for each friendly unit, I think it is that is sitting on like an objective or contesting a terrain piece that's out of combat, you get this desolation token.
Mhm.
And then you basically turn those, so at the start of your turn, into demonic power, where you kind of trade them in, and you get these points you can parse out against like different units. With no unit having more than three, but you know, some zero obviously be an option, but some having you know one or two. And if a unit has demonic power points when you're playing that turn, you basically have the juiced up version of them. There's like extra rules, you know, kind of like unlocks below one of the rules in their scroll, which just makes them better, which
Mm.
seems really cool because it's sort of like them busily taking advantage of the battlefield or they need to do to like kind of like juice up, you know, with it with the stuff in their weapons. So
Yeah.
like they had like a couple examples in the article, but you know, some are interesting. Like the Infernal cohort, you know, gets a ward save. You know, I think it's no points is no ward save. 1 point is a 6 up ward save. 2 points is a 5 up ward save. And 3 points is your 5 up ward save plus a slightly better 4 up against damage inflicted by players in spellcraft or prayers in spellcraft. So like there's stuff you can do, right, with any of these units to figure out how do I need to make this unit a little bit better as a strategy with all those points to like to get something done. And there's also like a lot of interesting board presence stuff where literally holding the board is going to give you more of these desolation tokens and give you more of this resource to trade in.
Hmm.
So a little planning ahead can just make it maybe so you have like 3 or 4 super juice units that you want rather than just one. And that's really interesting. The amount of board state planning to actually get the trait to work and the amount of like building you have to do for your list to be able to unlock that is probably, I think, pretty fun.
Yeah. And so those two rules were the ones that I really understood, like the buff potential, and they to me read like Fire Slayer rules. And so I immediately, when looking at this, was going, well, we know that we've got um, centaur models, we've got shooting, like actual shooting, not just movement deficiency, but also artillery. Like this, like you're saying, it seems very well rounded. Um, but I'm wondering how they're going to differentiate it even more. Is it going to be an actual army that relies more on saves than it does just points, right? Is this going to be an elite army? Is this going to be um, horde-ish? Because I know there's Hobgrots now, which love those models. Those models I think have been my favorite that I've seen from the release, which is hilarious.
Oh, they're so characterful because they're not like decked out in like, the family armory or the clan armory, like, under 15 layers of padding and jewels and like, oil, bronze ingots in their beards or whatever. They're just like, no, you're the cannon fodder. You're allowed to live as like second class citizens in the empire of the Khazad-dûm or Zardrum or whatever they call themselves. And that's, you know, seems appropriate for this fluff, but also you have cannon fodder. I think that they're going to be not a horde army, but like an army which selectively brings out bodies to shield the stuff which would otherwise leave them as too elite and too vulnerable, of course.
Yeah, and maybe that's their first their actual like objective grabbing things to pin down before they get there, right? Because I still expect most of this army to have a 4-inch movement.
Oh my God, it probably does. And there's probably some weird mechanic, maybe involving these demonic power points to get them somewhere more quickly. But I imagine it's like you have to really dedicate, them in a direction to get somewhere. And I think that they're probably tough. I bet you they do have 3-up saves, a lot of this infantry. But it's probably
3 or 4, right?
Yeah, 3 or 4. I imagine they're expensive enough that you're not going to want to send them off on suicide missions, which is why you need like these these other elements. But
Well, that's where I'm thinking the Dominator engine comes in.
oh, that thing is fun.
So I was having a discussion with one of our local players around here, and they were saying that they just did not like this model's rules, which is interesting because we don't have movement, right? Um, we don't have we don't have a lot. We have damage. That's it, right? So it looks like, per your explanation of those demonic points or whatever they're called, they get to increase their movement and their attacks by 1 per point. So it sounds like you could actually use this guy as that like suicide mission dude. And the reason I say that is because he is it's an interesting mix of rules, right? We have an anti-cav +1 rend at D3 damage, which is pretty decent, but it's wounding on 4s. And that was the main critique of this unit every time somebody had, or every time this person had talked about it. And I was just like, there's enough in the game where we'll probably see some way to buff +1 to wound somewhere in there. But it also has shoot in combat, right? So if you've got this guy and let's say his base move is 4, maybe now it's 6 or 7 going up with Hobgrots who are most definitely 6. And if they're not, what? But it seems like it'd be something that would go along with them. And become
I can see that.
Like a 2-punch of annoying and devastating, right?
100%. I mean, he has the 2 builds too, right? It sounds like you either have the cannon arms or like the big mace arms. And if you kind of forego the shooting, he becomes a wrecking ball, with a 4 damage attacks on a charge. And but also kind of interesting, like the way they built him, for what little we see, right? We don't know if he's like tough as nails or, bit fragile for big golem. But, with that Bane Mace, if you build him as a combat thing, he still only has 4 attack space. You kind of need to demonic power this guy up to like 3 to make him feel crazier. Like, 7 attacks at 4 up, 2 up, rend 1, 3 damage feels a lot better than 4 attacks or 5 attacks at that, especially when your
Yeah.
whole model is built around it. But it could just be one of those things where it's tough as anything and it gets in there and just kind of lasts for 4 turns. So then once in a while you can have the coal fire in its belly roar hot, and it goes to work. And that's interesting. And those cannons that we're getting commented on, I can see the argument for them not being too exciting with the wound 4, but Ren 2 on Cav with D3 damage in those shots, I still think could be a lot of work because
I
they're hitting on
mean,
2 ups.
yeah, and that's the thing, right? Like that to me is why I see like, and I generally hate looking at rules before the book comes out because
Hmm.
you're never seeing the full picture, and getting an impression of a unit is extremely hard when when something like this, we only see 30, not even 30% of the army, right? In its
Oh yeah,
entirety. But like that's where I see this one actually being a really interesting throwaway left flank or grab an objective with the unit of Hobgrots. Hobgrots
hmm
run. That guy runs, gets out on an objective, sits there and says, "Come charge me
doesn't
to
it
your
just feel
cav."
thematic? It's like the PS Dwarfs have sent off someone to disposable, and all they've sent in support is like a golem they probably build in a factory. Like they
Mm-hmm.
don't really care if it
Yeah,
dies, but it's still such an anchor for otherwise a screen that some other random hero thing might be able to take care of. Yeah, no, I get that.
I
I mean,
feel, I do feel like thematically, the cannon thematically should be able to shoot into combat, but if anyone to roll, if it's, or it should only be able to shoot into combat with non dwarf dwarf models or non chaos dwarf models. But if it rolls a 1 or a 2 or it misses to hit, that automatically hurts the hobgoblins. Like that would be such a cool rule
oh
where
yeah,
like
yeah.
if you're shooting into a combat, you get like +1 or something because it's, I don't know, like it looks like it wants to take advantage of like the old template style
Oh,
weapons,
it,
right?
it, it basically screams old templates. I mean, the smoke coming off of like those 2 guns in the
Mm-hmm.
picture. Oh yeah, I definitely agree. It'll be interesting to see if there's any other rules or what his profiles look like. But I do kind of wish they add something like that in because that would be thematic to the idea of the Chaos Dwarves like not caring about anyone but themselves and
Mm-hmm.
callously throwing away like their kind of like fodder, client races lives.
Yeah, and it should be interesting to see what they do. Like I'm looking at the prayers now, and those look like they're going to be super helpful,
Oh yeah,
turning
yeah.
things into crit mortals, and it's 2 turns and they're real slow, so they'll have enough time to be chanting as they're marching up the field.
I agree. Well, from what they've shared so far, like both of the spells and the lores, so for like the prayer seem like pretty good. Like, and I'm loving the utility I see because
Hmm.
me, Matt. Like, if there's like the ability to do stuff within an army, I'm much more
Oh
interested
yeah.
in it. I love the idea of like building in different directions or having like outs to things, and they just gave so many. Like to be able to with this hateful fractures thing, just click and point at something with 18 inches and have its movement, that can be a big deal
Hmm.
a lot of the time. I mean, it's not as strong as like the have moves and charges and runs and everything, but it's still a big deal when you're talking about like a 12-inch cavalry move or something like that. So
Well, and maybe that's the difference that we're going to see with this dwarf incarnation, right? Is it's not focused on debuffing, it's focused on like pure aggression from a dwarf side, which would be cool to see because Fire Slayers are pretty much debuffers that sit there and just tank it, right? Because of
that's
the
true.
amount of wounds and the amount of recursion, which admittedly has gotten worse, but
they it's true. It's true. The full theme will emerge as more of these rules come out, but they definitely have more. I think like 2/3 aggression, 1/3 interest in utility buffs or debuffs.
hmm.
Like for instance, the molten metal spell cast on an 8, so like not easy. But you basically roll your dice, and if you get it off, you roll the number of dice you have, and just like do mortal wounds to something within 18 inches. And all you have to do is beat their save. So more heavily armored stuff, you're gonna melt. It's like the old lore of Lead or lore of Metal, like
Hmm.
in Warhammer Fantasy, where hey, your 2-up knights are gonna have a bad day.
Well, and they're chaos dwarves, so you know they're going to have some benefit to cast somewhere available in the list that you build, right? So there's like I'm I'm interested to see how this will work out. Um, I'd love to see like each book that has come out has had some really cool new ways of playing the game. I'd love to see that continued with this. Right now, it just seems to be like a ton of damage. But what are they going to do that's different, right? Um, so I'm really interested to see that.
Yeah, me
I
too.
I do have one qualm still, and it's the
Mhm.
one model that really sent me into that. Oh, this is '90s cartoon overdrive,
I think
and
I know the
that's
one. I think I know the one you're going to say. But
it.
if I'm right, I have
Uh-huh.
another interpretation. But
Okay,
continue.
okay. No, no, no. That means you have to guess, and then all of us have to think.
Okay. I think that the model that bothered you more than any other model was the monster, like the Taurus.
Yeah, 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 for sure.
Yeah.
Like there's something about the way that it's painted, or it's probably another one of those sculpts that's really hard to photograph and get like the real scope of it. But like every angle I've seen of this so far is just like this is soft where it should be sharp. This is,
Hmm.
very rounded edges. And it just screams like, man, this could have been like some weird high elf thing. Um, that again fell out of like a He-Man cartoon, even though that's not '90s, but
Yeah,
like
I know exactly what you
it feels
mean.
like an action figure, which is cool. Like we play with toys and stuff, right? That's what this game is. But like there's something there that I'm still trying to figure out.
Let's talk about the model because I think I know what you're talking about. Like when you look at the paint job from the ones they showed in the previews, it's like the green one especially. And that is why it's reminiscent of like a 90s era action figure where
Mm-hmm.
you would go to Toys R Us and you pick up like, some He-Man or some, Masters Universe or BattleBots, thing.
It's Beast
And
Wars. It looks exactly like a Beast Wars
yeah,
transformer.
because they were all like lazily monocolored. Like, oh, I'm just going to color this thing one thing and no depth. And, the plastic ridges on those things would often be, am I a beast or am I a robot?
Mm-hmm.
That's why I'm all planes because it was, like you said, Beast Wars. It was just a bunch of like metal sheets that somehow were articulating to do stuff. And that
Mm-hmm.
is the vibe this thing gives off because
Yeah.
it's a golem, which is supposed to be able to fly, I guess, not a real monster. And so they kind of make it look like it's carved out of stone or something. And I think that the painter chose an unfortunate color with it. I mean, it's nothing wrong with green, but it's also the same because all their magical like flames. And
Yeah.
it's also makes it look like it's made out of plastic and kind of the 90s era rather than like some kind of substance that you could imagine these chaos orbs turning into a
Well, and
golem.
and there's excuse me, there is something to be said about them going this route, right? It's
Hmm.
brave, it's new, it's something that does not look like any other model. So I'm not like putting down the model. The thing is, it looks like a sculpture trying to not be a sculpture, but it's a sculpture because it's a model, right? Um,
Yeah.
and there's something there that hits that weird uncanny valley feel, where I can't tell what it's trying, like what it's trying to do,
You
and
know,
and that could be actually really worked well with. Like I could imagine somebody painting this up in an old school like ash and fire and just like full like brimstone look, right? And it just absolutely knocking it out of the park.
no,
So
I could see that. I have a little theory on that, and then I'll share the one I was going to tell
mhm,
you. It kind of jumped out at me when I first saw the model. I think the problem with that model, maybe the way it's painted, maybe like what could be done with it, is that you don't see how it's a machine or a golem as much as you do with, like, say, the Dominator engine. Dominator
mhm.
engine is a big belly full of fire. You can see that
Gears,
it's
yep.
gears, it's metal. It's like a bunch of like well-crafted dwarven, demon metallurgy or whatever. But
Hmm.
like the other one, it's almost like it's too smooth. It's like all of the joins or the servos or whatever, or the leaky oil or the flame, it's all hidden under the plating. So the thing just looks like a weirdly shaped like polygon organism, like I can't see where this is supposed to actually be a machine, but I know it must be.
Yeah, it's like
um,
a almost like a gargoyle in a way,
yeah,
which is interesting. And
exactly.
so, I get it. But lay your theory on me real quick.
All right. So the thing that jumped out at me, and again, this might be the monotone paint job or it not being metallic, which might help it, was that it just made me feel like I was playing like a PlayStation 1 game with like
Hmm.
sharp polygons meant to be stuff like I'm thinking like original Final Fantasy 7, wonderful game, but it's
Hey,
like, you
Bushido
know,
blade all the way.
yeah, and I'm like, this was the vibe it was giving me. Am I playing Star Fox? Is this an enemy?
Hmm.
Like
Yeah. And the rest of the models don't have that. Even the what is it called? The Destructor or whatever. What is it
the
called?
Dominator engine.
Dominator engine. Yes,
Mm,
it has to have that name because that is awesome. Also,
yeah.
I see so many Iron Warriors players debadging this and turning it into like a 40K construct or something.
Oh my God, yeah. This is the demon engine that everyone wishes they had.
Yeah.
40K, it's much
But
better.
like even this has like transcriptions all over. There is no like real flat surface on it, right? I think
Hmm.
this one actually encapsulates that kind of updated feel for Chaos Dwarves that I was expecting. Whereas the other one, we'll have to see a better paint job.
That's
But
fair. And to be fair to that other model of the Torlon or whatever it is that it's a little bit redeemed to me by the writers because they're
mhm,
all kind of on a howdah, which is interesting because they really make it clear that this is like a construct they're riding, not like a model, like a mount, like a saddle. And they have some pretty cool riders. There's like the special named one, like the whole arc of magic, and I think it's just a great like dynamic look as he half
yeah,
turns the stone. And then there's the sorcerers you could put on top of it. And one of them is like a female, chaos dwarf sorcerer, like just like a great like fireball in her hand about to huck a spell kind of look. And it
mhm.
just really, I think, made those models look so much more dynamic. The riders weren't just sitting there in a pose.
Yeah. And let me put this back on the record. I know it's probably a better paint job than I can do. So better paint job is not the word that I'm looking for. A
Scheme,
different
maybe.
a different stylistic choice is what would benefit me, I think, aesthetically for that model.
I'm right there with you, and we'll have to see. I mean, obviously I'll get a bunch of these and start painting them and stuff, and what comes of that, you guys can tell me if it's better or worse than these in terms of the feels. But
Mhm.
I'll aim for the former.
So I'm hoping I can get away with possibly using, some dragon ogres once the rules come out.
Hmm.
Depending on the size of these bases, I think they might be a little small, but we'll find out. But that being said, like, what were you thinking for the army? What do you think it'll bring that's unique? You said you
You
had something
know,
there.
yeah, in the unique factor, I think that probably the thing that jumps out at me is them making holding stuff on the battlefield for more than just points important. That's what I think is going to be
Mhm.
interesting here because all their demonic power stuff is coming right off of like their despoiling. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know how they're despoiling this in the middle of the battle, but maybe it's kind of like the Uruk-hai sometimes like ripping up everything around Isengard, like in the middle of Lord of the Rings. Like they're doing what they need to do to get the engines going or to make their stuff work. And if the only way they can do that is to hold physical terrain pieces as well as objectives with units, that's going to make it really interesting to actually deal with the battlefield as more than just like clusters of rules on things that you don't care about except for points.
Mhm.
Now, like you have to do more than just the points to get the stuff you need to make your army strong in terms like 2 and 3.
Yeah.
Because if you have a couple turns where you're not getting any of those desolation points, you're not going to have any demonic power really, and then it's gonna hurt you, I think. So that's
Yeah. So that again makes me wonder how they're going to keep the speed going for a lot of things. Although they're going to have a bunch of different strategies that I would normally use. I think
oh
but
yeah.
I think that actually fits the theme of dwarves in general, right? Like dwarves are all about material power, right? Whether it's, I've got all the gold and I've hammered it in my skin. I've got all the guns. That's how I'm going to win this battle. And in this case, literally taking more material by just being more, having more. And I kind of like that theme. It's an interesting way of looking at it.
I do too. I mean, it's gonna make for like a lot of fun, especially if all the units have like really juicy, like, oh, I really want to do that kind of demonic power upgrades. I mean, if like a bunch of them are duds, like they mess up the whole book, then it could be like, well, I can get away with four because there's only two units that were needed or something like that. But there's there's going to be like a lot of room for that. I think beyond even the demonic power interplay, the thing which is going to be so refreshing is a reliable version of a chaos army that can do everything in every phase, rather than
Yeah.
an erratic version, which would be with Skaven, right? Like
Yeah,
their
that's
artillery will probably work. It'll probably do what it's supposed to do. It won't blow up.
yeah. And that'll be unique in and of itself for chaos. For sure. I mean, outside of Bliss Barb archers or seekers, right? Like there is not really a dependable shooting unit in chaos.
Yeah.
So yeah, that will definitely shake things up a bit. I do wonder the points cost though. If these are probably going to be an elite army, and that's probably why I'm putting another strike on the Torlon,
Mm-hmm.
or not Torlon. That's the Stormcast one, but the Taurus.
Yeah, the big bull monster is like, will you have the points for this for what it might or might not do, versus all the stuff you want to have the points for, which
Yep.
kind of goes to, I think, the other theme of today's show, which is them bodies over them goddies.
Mm-hmm. And when I look at this model and I think about, contemporaries that we would see for a bigger base leader type unit, right? On the
Mm-hmm.
monster, they're generally 350 to like 500 points, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a huge chunk of your army in one spot, right? Now, like 350 is on the low level for monster builds.
Mm-hmm.
But when I'm looking at something like this, I always have to ask myself, is that one model going to survive the game and be in the places that I need it to be? Now, with this, I can see it having a better movement because of the wings. And we see that with models like Alariel, who is just a terror nowadays, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Everywhere.
we see a lot of fast moving monsters. Manfred is very much one of those like crap. Forge Rye is going to be out there once people have amassed too many vampires to be good. They've won a lot of tournaments already. The Forge Rye and whatever the new version of Blood Knights lists are. And like when I think about it, like even Keepers of Secrets, while they're not as like comparatively points, correct to some of those other choices, they're fast and they can get there to do what they want to do. But once they're knocked out, generally that's a huge amount of the army and the utility of the army that all those points have been sunk into.
All concentrated in one very identifiable point. I agree. That, I mean, like the keeper, right? I mean, they're there to swing hard, provide magic, let the demons fight twice, or the Heat fight twice sometimes. That's scary. I mean, but the other is if Valarial goes, if she fails her 4-up comeback, like your opponent just like breathes a sigh of relief. If I guess presuming you were the Soda player, this is the example. And so they're like, okay, good. Now the problem is solvable. Because
yeah, and you see that with Nagash lists, or like Nagash and Tech lists were some of the biggest defenders for the longest amount of time. It didn't matter what list you brought Nagash in, whatever list you brought it in, it became a Nagash list, right?
unlike with Croak, if you want to play Croak games, you're doing that.
Yeah, although Seraphon are broken, he's still too cheap. I don't care what anybody says. um, but yeah, so like with God models, there's so many things working for them that it has to be costed that. And in doing so, the cost of that model actually generally kind of takes up like a good quarter of your army composition at the very least.
His potential energy is so high that like all you got to do is find a way to like kind of undercut that and take the model itself, and like you don't have to deal with all that. He's already paid for it. It's gone.
Yeah, and that used to be like a very good tactic to do, specifically against Nagash. Nagash, if you see him in a list and you have the ability to take him down, you take him down right away, and the rest of the list is just gone. But with God models in general, you're also dealing with a couple of other things, right? You're dealing with base size, where you're not able to engage in smaller combats, pile in effectively. Sometimes if somebody's screening correctly against horde armies, they could just be stuck fighting, 80 grots or 80 goblins over the course of the game, right? That being said, they have to roll pretty poorly for that to happen, but it's still a very real possibility.
And that's a fair point, though. Even now, I mean, like, I think they've some of the god models made tougher, stronger, given abilities where it's hard to pin them in like that. But there's still a lot of times where like they can be almighty, destroy the universe, but if they're stuck half an inch outside the objective, fighting like 10 goblins or 10, chaos marauders, or I should say dark marauders, they still don't get the point, and they maybe kill those marauders, but good for you.
Yeah,
giant turn.
And maybe the way to work around that is ensuring that your tactical objectives, right? Your battle plan essentially for your army is built around that. But then again, that's another egg that has to be put in that basket.
It's very true.
Like to even like further compound that, right? If it's not a unique character, it's probably one of the more survivable ones in your army. You already have things that you're building around it. So then you start adding artifacts and everything else because you can generally see that, hey, this one's probably going to stick around longest for that 4+ or 1 command point to bring a unit back for recursion, etc. Right? So like it becomes a basket that starts building more even than the points costs that are allocated to it. And for me, that's always a dangerous thing.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that you get a lot of utility, for certainly building that way and getting something so blown out as like, this is the theme of my army, here's the linchpin. But you have the downside of having chosen a linchpin, to put it just so finely. All of the stuff that they're doing doesn't work if they get hampered or destroyed. And that just means that you have given a glowing red video game boss target.
Yeah, I mean, to kind of further compound that, like there are not only are you making a giant target on your back, right? You're putting all your eggs in that basket that spilleth over. But after that, you're also making the way you play centric to that model, which means any debuff, any Bellicor, any, other god model that has the ability to kind of stop you shuts down the way that you want to play purely from one model, which to me has always been a little scary.
They become traps for your play too, right? I mean, you kind of get used to it. I mean, even when you're not getting countered, you kind of sometimes have to stop yourself and say, hey, am I learning to play the game better? Or am I like hitting this button I got from this god model a lot and letting it carry me? I mean, I always think about that with Bellicor, like the Slaves of Darkness. Like Bellicor is so great. He's so fun. He does have a lot of utility, but you have both, his shutdown what's a game thing. You have like a flying 2-cast wizard with 14-inch move or 12-inch move, whatever it is, a great crazy save.
Counter charge.
counter charge,
Yeah.
oh, my guy strike first in the 4-up. Well, that's great, but the 450 points you're not using to play the game with other models means that he's doing all this work. And when this doesn't work, or, like, so maybe it's because, you had that counter. If it does work, maybe it's because you're using these tricks. You're sort of developing a great fine-tuned sense for it through the big God model. But yeah, the second someone comes out, which is like nixes them, you are under practice with the other things you need to be doing to win.
Yeah. And then the other, and I'm not hating on the God models. I have all the God models.
Oh, yeah, they're lovely.
Are never centric to my playing style because the last thing that they generally give up is board control. And that in and of itself in this edition is so important. Even if you have a flying model, that means you have to max out your skill on playing the rest of the models to ensure that you're getting that God model stuff working, right? Because all you have to do is make one wrong move with everything else, and God model be damned, that was 2 other units on top of a regular hero that you could have 2 or 3 other units sometimes, right? That you could have had in position.
And to that point, because I think it's really interesting, the whole bodies not goddies thing. Let's just think about that with a lot of these dudes. They're 350 to 500 points, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's 3 reasonably small heroes or units, or 2 to 3 really good ones, or pretty good ones, or 1 good one plus something else, based upon any other rubric. And yeah, like you can make a bunch of mistakes with those units, and you have to make a lot more mistakes, and that gets some utility because you could be all these different places, and just their existence is doing stuff for you. Whereas if you take your flying god beast and you fly it in the wrong direction, like that is it.
You forget to power through, right? If you forget to power through with your god model, that can cost you a game, right?
So you are stuck in the fight.
and I think like we do kind of see a little bit of like this mentality seeping in. Like we don't see Archaon, right? Because he is thought to be overcosted. His rules are insanely good, but he actually hits that threshold of, well, this is way too expensive, and I can't make up the difference, right? That's part of why I think we see no Archaon whatsoever. Like I can't remember the last time I've seen him in a list. In God models specifically have that problem where they can fall into either overbearing and undercosted, or overcosted and underbearing, and they fall and hop and skip from those 2 over and over and over, to the point where they're either the villain croak, or like they are, everybody loves them and they're reliable, and they fit into almost every list looking at Bellicor, right? So like the last point that I want to make about their points and their worth in the army is that when an army is built around a god model, and the god model is the core strategy for how things are happening, if that god model goes up 30 points, those lists are usually bunk now. And that becomes this whole strategy of, okay, how do I build back to this list that I had previously created for this God model so that I can make this, and this happen for one model? And that further entrenches that ideology and that mentality of, okay, the only way I'm going to win is with this. So when you lose that model early on, it is absolutely crushing, and just from player mentality, right?
Yeah, it's very, very true, because like when you're thinking this is central to your strategy and it goes, then you don't have a strategy. It's not like you've lost a piece. You've lost everything your list was designed to do sometimes. I definitely had one game where I was playing against a really cool guy who had like a Nagash, like a bunch of like stuff around it, I think, and it was like, okay, I think it might have been Night Hunt who was playing, but it was like, here's Nagash, and Nagash's position let me like do the thing which we're talking about, where, well, gotta go in and get him real quick, and it worked out. And then it was like, what is left? what is left, right? And I think in that moment, my opponent, he had that feeling. I could see it, like where he's like, well, he overexposed the Gosh. He got a turn one smackdown on the Gosh, which I don't think he quite calculated for. And now he was like ready to pick up his toys, because he didn't have much left he was thinking he could do. Now, granted, never do that. Like, it's always fun to keep playing and like figure out if something can come up. But he was down about like 10 steps based upon that situation alone, based upon his list and the fact it was built around the Gosh and doing the Gosh things.
Yeah, and like no hate on anybody who plays the God models. Like we run into them everywhere all the time. It's not a bad thing. It's more that mentality of like if everything relies on this and somebody snipes that model, what are you going to do?
Yeah,
And
100%.
and the knee-jerk reaction to that would be continue playing as much as possible each time that happens, and every practice game be even more reckless with that God model so that you can learn how to deal with those situations, right? Every practice game before a tournament, do it. But like on the other side, not having God models, I feel depending on your battle tactics and your chosen play style or your more comfortable play style, I think it's actually more freeing as a player, for a lot of different reasons. Like myself personally, I don't prefer combos. I prefer maybe one little buff here or there, but situational buffs that happen at the right time, right? And the ability to have models positioned where you need them, one more unit than you think you're going to have, right? Or your opponent thinks you're going to have for one turn longer will always be better, in my opinion, than a God model that I can charge into with a bunch of Chaos Knights and just take out of the game.
I would completely agree with that. I think that as much as it's fun to play the big model sometimes, tends to be my philosophy too when I'm building lists. And it doesn't have to be, a million individual troops, but like as many different units and different things you can get in places, hopefully with a lot of bodies to help in many cases, just gives you that feeling of nothing that I lose is a mortal blow. And everything can fulfill all of these different functions, to give me the points and win me the game and kill me the stuff, even though nothing is like the standout hero. And it is very satisfying to have that flexibility. I mean, a couple of things that I think of, what it is. Like in the current list I've been running, there's the Gunner Brand combo, right? Where you get like a Gunner Brand and you get like his little friends and you include the wizard and you get like his daughter running on the bow. And it's three different units with three different various utilities. But I'm happy as a clan with Gunner Brand himself, the hero war chief, is sitting off in the forest on his own, screening out some area I don't want things to drop in the background.
Yep.
Or sitting by a place of power, poking it every turn. That's his whole job. He doesn't do anything. But I couldn't like put him there to do that work if he was like a Gotrek level killer hero who has to charge the middle of the board and he was like 400 points. If that was what he was and I brought him, I would have to do something with him. Like my hand would be forced because he'd be such a point sink. And, it goes with the other units too, right? Like you can sit there and, you know, throw something as a sacrificial unit. You can make something a screen. You can run off to get a battle tactic, and nothing is like too good for a reasonably costed unit. And its death is not too costly, if someone comes and charges it. And sometimes it puts things out of position so you can do more with other units later because they have to go kill something. They can't kill everything at once.
Yeah. And like fundamentally, I think going a Bods not Gods is what it does is it builds in the redundancy to have more choices. And for myself as a player, I like having more choices because once I know my units, once I know their capabilities and their limits, then like the better path towards victory in most games is being able to attack a situation. Well, first, being able to look at a situation in front of me, right? Let's say I've got a ton of OBR in front. They've got a God model. I've got, 3 units more than that one model. So what do I need to do? Can I kill it? Maybe not. But what I can do is split up and start playing the objective game. and just ensure
Exactly.
that that thing has to chase me, like being on the opposite side of what you're saying, right? Like
Hmm.
being the opponent in that situation, I can lead Gotrek on a merry little chase all the way around the table, or he can go sit on one objective while I take four, right?
Exactly. And speaking to the objective game, I mean, I think the objectives in this particular season are really slanted towards wanting more units and not wanting heroes necessarily who are overexposed all the time and worth like 800 points. Like
Mm-hmm.
I just think off the top of my head, I mean, if you are playing against a bunch of god heroes, wood god heroes, and someone's doing Master of the Paths, well, kill a hero. Those heroes are fighting each other, that'll happen. If you're the Bods Not Gods kind of play style and someone is taking that against you and your heroes are like three people who don't need to be in the front lines that can hide behind everything, they might not get that started till turn 4 or 5, if at all. If even if you feel like you're losing, they might just be locked out of 15 points because they can never get to that hero until
Yep.
the end of the game. And another example would be when you're doing something like, or I think it might be Restless Energy, or whichever one it is, where you just need to have stuff in neutral territory, more units in neutral territory. That's more units. If you have 700 points in like some God Killer and then a couple of units, and your opponent has like five little 80 point whatever is running around, you're never going to score that tactic because they're
Mm-hmm.
always going to outnumber you in the middle, which means you're locked out of like a huge number of points, even if you're killing everything you touch. And you
Yep.
also can't track them all down because there's more army.
And Scouting Force suffers the same problem, right? Have I think it's all or half outside of your deployment zone. Don't quote me, or quote me in the comments. Do it, because I just have not been able to read the rules lately, and my brain is a wet sieve. Um, but the ability. Well, first off, if you're committing to that battle tactic, then that means that more than likely you're either not getting your god model outside of the area, because you're trying to keep them safe, which can backfire if they have any, redeployment abilities, or you're putting it up front where it's going to be easy pickings, or possibly overbalancing you, right? Um, and if I just have three extra light cavalry units, I'm good. I'm good. I'm already working on objectives. You go up there, you take that. I'll charge India. Maybe I can hold you up for a turn, one turn of one monster, that's your big thing. That's fine. That's great, grand, wonderful.
Exactly. And it sort of shifts the maybe like the pressure when you're playing the Bods Not Gods from my model has to do something to my model has to not die as quickly as they want it to, which just means a couple ones here, there, or two is normal things of the god, even the god tier fights that happen, and
Mm-hmm.
you're doing great. I mean, I just love observing that line just around like the probabilities, like the D6 is when it sort of comes out in most games. Like you see it all the time. Oh, I have these like four damage attacks. They hit on threes. Oh, I'm sorry. Here's your 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Now you're definitely going to be here.
Nagash miscasted on his second cast and then third cast, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like
Mhm.
the more that I find that I put everything on to an apex where it has to happen from that, right? The more the failures hurt more, which for some players, like I know a lot of players that really get into like super combos, right? And they base them on these types of models, and it really does become like old school, like Death Star lists, and those are really cool. Um, but they need to get the job done, and all it takes is one turn, or even half a turn. I could roll my saves on, just a little bit better than normal, and
Mhm.
that's game because they weren't able to clear that objective for that turn that they needed.
So many versions of it, or other things, right? Like I mean, one of my favorite little tricks right now against that kind of thing is the Nurgling unit, the Regiment
Mm-hmm.
Renown, right? Like so you come when you have you're hoping for your big double turn, you cleared the big thing, and you're ready for the big double fight or double activation, whatever. But I'll pop three Nurglings behind you and combat with you, now you can't go anywhere.
Yep.
You're just totally done. You're baked.
Yeah. And for me, like I think those can be some of the most frustrating moments of the game, right? Regardless of whether you're playing a big monster or, you know, a very spread out, very very light list, right? And MSU, like
Mhm.
regardless, those kind of like those moves, while they're meant to be played and they're great when they go off. Um, that kind of like not well, the debuff area of AOS is such an important thing to deal with as a player, right?
Mhm.
People stopping you from moving, slowing your movement, taking away your CP, trapping you in combat. That like the less models you have to be able to either screen out, force a kind of target priority on your opponent, um, or even just like provide extra chances to make them double guess what they're about to do from a counter charge or something like that. The less ability you have to do that, the easier it is for your opponent to read the tempo of the game and potentially force it onto their side. I know I talk a lot about like controlling the tempo and the momentum of the game.
Mhm.
And the easiest way to do that is to go up against a god list where you know you're going to trap them in combat for one turn. Now, there's other debuffs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But all the eggs in one basket is so much easier to stop. And that in turn helps you as the opponent of a god model, right? Playing the bod models, um, hold the tempo of the game. If your opponent feels on the back foot, there's even more of a chance that you're going to force a mistake out
Mhm.
because you've got your redundancies built in. You have an extra charge that they don't have. You have an extra movement that they don't have. You have the extra possibility of capturing an objective they don't have. And by
Mhm.
doing that, you're forcing them to play your game. You're already starting out on an unequal standing. Now there are certain armies that kind of get away with having a god model, and I'm looking right at you OBR and right at you Seraphon. Those
Mhm.
two make you play their game right away, just
Oh,
because of the
yeah,
way
yeah.
that those rules are. But the moment those two fall is the moment that game is over.
So that's an interesting subtopic on this. I think we really should dive into when we're talking about the gods versus the bods. Yeah, when the gods do have like something that kind of forces you to react a bit more, and it's not just a game of tie them up in combat with some chaff or like or stop them from being as efficient as possible. And I think that there are that subset of gods that aren't just beat sticks. They have some other ability which, while they're alive, so critically changes the shape of the game. Like not only do they typically have a list built around them, but you kind of are forced to find a way to deal with them. And the ones I'm kind of thinking of are like Croak with his like giant aura of like I'm gonna just pepper you to death with mortal wounds or going off very
Mm-hmm.
easily from a spell. Old Techless, where he would just kind of almost be like a video game boss, and just raise his little staff and like wave of heat everything and the whole table, and
Mm-hmm.
find a way to get to him where you die. And it really felt like you were playing like again a video game boss.
Mm-hmm.
But or like you mentioned Catacross. Catacross dangerous, but also giving such potent global buffs. He doesn't need to be in every fight to provide his value.
And debuffs.
Hmm.
And debuffs. That's one of his major things, right? So
Yeah.
like there are models and armies that specifically work with those very well. Seraphon and OBR specifically, again in like this edition. And those are those are probably the roughest ones to run into, but at the same point in time, if you have the redundancy and you have the strategy, you don't necessarily need to engage Croak, right? You don't
Yeah.
necessarily need to engage um, Catacross in order to win a game. If you take out all the rest of his army, focus on them, which is still a huge task because they're throwing debuffs, they're throwing mortal wounds, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You're at you the whole time, making you -1 to hit, whatever it is. Like there's still just one very expensive model now having to slog it across the board.
Exactly. And I don't know. I mean, there's those abilities come in different flavors. And we didn't even mention that there are, of course, the recursion engine, ones which are their own challenge. Like Alariel is kind of like a combo beat stick recursion engine, which is a problem. You don't like that. You definitely get that in some others too. So I mean,
but she's also pointed fairly accurately-ish, right? The like she also has movement, but she's not a debuff engine. I think the debuff engine gods are possibly the ones that have are actually the ones that I would consider playing if I enjoyed that type of play. Specifically because they do have a use outside of, that one thing, right? That either I'm a beat stick or I'm going to combo up and make everybody around me better, right?
That's a very fair thing.
They can reach across the table and say, no, you're not going to do this thing. And that even more so makes redundancy built armies, I think, a very good thing.
Yeah.
I'm consistently building God's armies, but never playing them. And that's kind of the last point I kind of wanted to get to at the very least is like when we're list building, and I'm actually kind of interested to see if you do the same thing here. I usually like to build out the idea of my list and then leave about 300 points there. And the idea of the list generally has about it has a good amount of redundancy already built in. I tend to build, 2 mini armies and then leave 300 points to 400 points, whatever it is, to see if I want to add bodies or if I can finally fit a Gotti in, if I feel that it'll work. Most of the time, when I look at them, I still set the Gotti back up on the shelf because I'm like, anything that Gotti can do, I could probably do within game with 3 more units. I could probably do that, or just not play that game entirely and focus on my objectives and tactical objectives.
Yeah, it's an interesting approach you take with it because I think mine is slightly different, but it has an echo of the same. I mean, whenever I'm building a list, I definitely start with a concept, something I want to try to explore and try to see if I can get all the pieces in there. But what I'm most looking for are functional pieces for the jobs to be done in the field. And there's definitely some of that synergy to make stuff work better. Some of that's like role based. Some of that's, like, is there a redundancy on to build in just by having a second one of something if it's like really heavy to the theme or whatever. But once I've looked at all those things, I'm generally close to points, and it's a matter of tweaking a couple things or adding or dropping something. What I rarely have is like 400, 500 extra points. And the only way a Gotti in a list like that is going to be built in is if he's pivotal to it, right? Like doing like a demon, like what is Legion of the First Prince, Bellacor's got to be there. Or something like that, or he has or she has like a role where it's not necessarily the only thing going on the list, but it's something the list needs to function the way I want it to. Like the one I'm playing right now has a Braxy in there, but she's not a Gotti, more like a on deck kind of level model, but still 300-ish points.
She's trying to break the ceiling. Give her love,
Exactly. She's getting there. And, but I had, when I thought about including a list, it wasn't like, oh, this is the centered list. If she falls, the list dies. It's not that at all. It's that she does something none of the other stuff the list can do, and she does it efficiently for what the list composition is. So there she is. And I think that's where those decisions come from for me. What I do think is sort of an interesting kind of wrinkle on it is that I find that I am very reluctant generally to include high points density units right now, unless they're tough as nails, unless they literally are a tar pit. Like if I spend 400 points in the unit, 20 Chaos Warriors, okay, maybe they're tough enough. Or
10 Black Knights,
yeah, 10 Black Knights, close to it. Maybe I'm fine with the 6 Therodons because they're chunky. Yeah,
Very
it's
nice.
very nice. But like I don't want to have 350 points in a 10 wound model with like a 4 up save with some cool utility, or even a 15 wound model with a 3 up save most of the time, because that's
Hmm.
dangerous. That's the danger zone because something can get through that armor. And that kind of, I think, maybe it's a follow-up point or follow-up idea is if you have the big Gaudis and you have like the stuff that's out there, what are the boogeymen for you that you were not going to expect was going to bring it down? And there's just too many to count. And I think that's the problem with
Yeah.
using them.
Yeah. Even just Vanguard, any monster hunting units, which there are a lot of out there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those can just win by just mauling you over the course of the game,
It's true.
right? Um, all it takes is, again, one bad roll. If you just don't heal one turn what you were expecting to on
Mm-hmm.
average, that can be the end of that model. And you did bring up an interesting thing that may be worth looking into, which is the Demigods with like
Yeah.
Abraxia, and like specifically the ones that always stand out to me because I've been building lists for them for, I don't know, a decade now. But Sylvaneth are one of the ones that really fall into that, where almost all of the heroes that you want to use are demigods, right?
Mhm.
Set Alariel aside, all of your big trees are at that points level, right? As well
Mhm.
as, if you want to bring Belthanos or
Drycha.
Drycha or Lady of the Vines, like those are all core parts of that army that really do change the way it's played. That being said, it's a very odd, off the wall toolkit style of play. But those are almost inherent to list building for Sylvaneth in general.
Well, that's an interesting way to think about it. Because like with the Sylvaneth, right? If you think of them as demigods, yes, but like they're not like the incredible unapproachable point sink of like the 600 points or something plus that
Mm-hmm.
you get from like a Kragnos or like an Alario. It's like more manageable. I mean, it's still a lot, but it's like we're in the 300 to 400 point range kind of stuff. Like it's like a big unit. It's not like two big units.
Yeah.
So you kind of do that. And when you have them there, as long as they have a unique function, which is interesting, provides you play, sure. Maybe just think of them as a unit. Don't think of them as like the center. Like I was kind of referring to how I've been playing around with Apraxia earlier with this, but that's very much how I've been approaching it with her. Like, is she 360 points? Yeah, she's a demigod through and through. But you know what? She can die and I'm just fine. As long as she did her job of like romping around and catching something out that I didn't want,
Yep.
to be alive, which she can do with her special movement tricks, or, kick flipping onto an objective and stealing it from something which she never should be able to steal it from because of her spear trick, which makes it objective score cap 1 for the whole turn.
Mm-hmm.
Duels anything off an objective, or just hard pit something because she's tough. Or
Yep.
is a distraction card effect? If she fulfills those jobs, I don't care. She can die gloriously or crawl back to her like, resurrection pit and then come back for the next battle. The work is being done.
Yep. And
And
oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
oh yeah, I was just gonna say, I guess with the Sylvaneth, like is Belfnos doing his thing and he dies in turn 3, but he did his thing. You're clapping. It's fine.
Yeah. But I feel like when I approach those lists, they do have to be expendable, and I do, like you're saying, have to not have that kind of attachment to them as a fundamental core piece of the list, right? Like,
Mhm.
and I don't know why I'm picking on Sylvaneth, but I am. But there's some of their core units that you really want to take, like Spirit of Durthu is almost 400 points, right? So
Yeah.
like there are some armies that do rely on this, and that's not to say that like that's where I think the distinction of demigods versus goddies is so big, because if the rest of the list can function without it, perfect, because you have at least 1,500 points or more, 1,700 most likely, ish. So yeah, but
Yeah.
um, but yeah, I think we've come to a good place.
I think so. Let's maybe pick this topic up in the future episode, but I think we know that there's a lot of vulnerabilities to your to your Gottis. They're great,
Mm-hmm.
but they're great. But sometimes someone can slip that magic spear in and slay or temporarily defer, at least, your Demigod or Gotti's power. And that turns the table in a lot of games. I'll leave like one fun example. I mean, you guys all out there, unless you should know that I've been having fun with the Humble Myrmidon recently. And he's just a good example. Like a third of something's points cost can run in and whack you.
Mm-hmm. And
there's a lot of
he
things.
Punches way above his perceived weight, and I'm here for the just the demis, not the demigoddies. Give me the demis. The demis to me are always the best ones because you never expect them to punch as high as they do.
They're the sweet spot. Yeah, if you're some like good 200, 300-ish point thing, and like you can be lost, but you're effectively just a unit in your own right that is beloved of the army. Use them. Yep. If you're 900 points and you're just kind of flip the table the second he like rolls 2 1s, play him, have fun. But if you're going into a competitive tournament setting and you just can't afford that, think about it a bit.
Yeah, just realize you might hand of dust your own feelings,
Yeah.
So, but yeah. That being said, thanks everyone for dropping by. Leave us a like, leave us a subscribe. Hit the bell thingy and go check out. I guess we do have Bodies Not Gotties merch that I need to put up.
That's right. We're going to make sure that that's out there. I mean, combination of the magic shorts, the Bodies Not Gotties hat, I believe, not bad at a tournament or a casual setting or a formal event if you're so inclined.
And I think we should let Rocco have the last word tonight.
Oh, absolutely.
For our outro. Should be good.
Hello, everybody. It is Rocco, your boy, coming at you once again with another Always Strikes Last promo. That's right. Ring that bell. Leave a like, a subscribe. On whatever platform you're listening to us on, be it YouTube, be it Podbean, whatever you got these days, so you can keep up to date. Don't forget, we have the Patreon if you want to, give us a thank you for all the stuff we put out. That gets you into our member-exclusive Discord. And if you want to be an even bigger supporter, we've got a merch store.